just tell me whether they could hear it, and let me know whether you can hear it clearly and whether you can see me okay, just before I get started. Yay! Brilliant! Okay, that's good. Okay. Hi, I'm just going to wait just confirmation till I hear from KOM that everybody can hear me, and then I can get started. Okay, well, sorry for the delays, guys. I appreciate that it's maybe just gone forward where you are. We just had a few technological issues with the system, and it's 9 o'clock here in the UK, so I'm kind of working away with the system by myself. So apologies for running just a little bit late this evening, and apologies for those who maybe logged on to the webinar a couple of weeks ago and all they could hear was a really strong banging noise. I'm really sorry that you were unable to hear me at that time. Okay, just if I could maybe introduce myself. My name's Julie Jones. I'm the admissions tutor for the BSc and the MSc physiotherapy programs here that we run at RGU. And so my job really is in terms of promoting the course, recruiting to the course, and reading through all your applications, and then taking students through the selection process, and then obviously making the decisions about whether students are offered a place on the course. Really, in terms, I've done this one time before, so this is still kind of a new experience for me, and really this experience is all about you getting out of what you want to out of this evening. So I think really in terms of what I was planning to do is maybe just give you a little bit of information about the course. I can see questions popping up on the right hand side, so if people have questions, I will try and answer them as I go along. I think the main thing I would say is anybody's got any questions, no matter how small or big, please don't feel free to ask, please don't be scared to ask those questions. There's chances that there's lots of people within the group that are wishing to ask that same question. If there's any particular area that I'm not giving much attention to and you wish me to do that, please again feel free, because as I said, it's your session and it's what you want to get out of this session. Okay, so particularly the Master's Pre-Registration in Physiotherapy, this course has been running at RGU for a number of years now and has been running very successfully, with taking students from the United Kingdom, from Europe, and indeed from North America. So we have a number of students coming each year from Canada and the United States. And we also have students coming from places right across Europe and indeed South Africa. And so it's a really nice eclectic mix to the course. Normally what we're looking to recruit is somewhere between 24 to 30 students per year, and I think therefore with a good mix of international and national students, it makes a really nice cultural mix, and it makes the teaching exciting because everybody comes from a different background and has something different to add to the course. So I think from that point of view, I know that's one of the frequently asked questions in terms of what's the makeup of the class. In terms of admissions tutor and entering people into the programme, I don't necessarily have a ring-fence number of how many home students or how many Canadians or how many Americans that I'm going to have in the course. It really, for me, it all goes on individual merit, and therefore some years that we may have more home students or we may have more Irish students, and other years we're going to have proportionally more North American students. So it very much is variable, and for me it's very much based on the applications that I'm receiving at that time. I'll come back to the application process because I'm sure there'll be some questions on that as I go along. So maybe just to touch on the course delivery. The physiotherapy program is accredited with CAPTI, which is the American Physical Therapy Society. It's also accredited with the Health and Care Professions Council in the United Kingdom and the Chartered Society of Physiotherapy. So it's accredited with a number of bodies, and therefore any student who does our course is accredited and has that ability to register to work in the United Kingdom, but also it can go through and work in the United States as well. The course is a very practically hands-on course, and very much that ethos is right from the outset of this programme. So you commence the programme at the end of January, and then right from the outset we're thinking about applying physiotherapeutic skills and assessment and treatment. Because anatomy and physiology is a prerequisite of this course, it allows us therefore to go straight into looking at how do we undertake an assessment. And therefore, because of the small classroom sizes, there's theory-based sessions, but when we come to doing the practical session, we're looking at somewhere between 12 and 15 people within a practical class with one clinical tutor there. And therefore, again, it allows us to give you that quality feedback in terms of what you're doing in class, and also then be able to develop your skills and competencies within that area. The first module we run is called Foundations in Physiotherapy Practice, and as by its title, we're very much covering core aspects of physiotherapy practice and starting to look at different models of assessment and thinking about how we need to adapt physiotherapeutic assessment skills to meet individual need. One thing that this course doesn't aim to do is give you, this is how you assess a total knee replacement, this is how you assess a hemiplegic shoulder. What this assessment module, and indeed the ethos of this course is very much set to give you, these are the assessment skills that you can utilise for somebody who's had a total knee replacement. And through our sort of more problem-based approach to learning and inquiry-based learning, very much the sessions are very much delivered where I may be looking at all those skills and helping you to sort of think about, well, which clinical tools would you use or which would be pertinent for that particular individual at a time. Because thinking around the knee, there's probably somewhere between 15 and 20 specialist tests that you could use to differentiate structures around the knee, but you wouldn't necessarily need to use all of them to assess a particular individual. And therefore it's trying to get you right from the outset of this course to have a more problem-solving approach to your assessment, and also be able to problem solve when you would want to use one over another, and perhaps when one is more viable or more reliable with that presentation. And that whole sort of ethos of patient-centeredness really goes throughout the whole course. And as I said, it's still instilled really from the sort of first week here on the course, and it's built upon throughout as you go through the programme. And suffice to say, that's how we approach treatment. It's very rare that as a lecturing member of the team that I will stand in front of a class for 2 hours giving you a whole lot of theory. More so what we're more likely to do with our problem-based approach is, okay guys, in preparation for today I'd like you to read around osteoarthritis, and I want you to have an understanding of the pathophysiology and the clinical features. And then very much more in the class, it's a very much applied session and sort of thinking, okay, so with those physiological features, why do you think this person is demonstrating the symptoms that they are based on this physiotherapy assessment that we're looking at? And we're trying to get you to relate structure to function and be able to relate clinical symptoms and being able to explain that in relation to the pathology. We're also then getting you to explain what impact with the psychological, sociological, physiological issues that that person has, how is that going to impact on their clinical symptoms? And likewise, what other medical conditions do they have that again may impact on those clinical symptoms and may impact perhaps on how we'd like to change that assessment and indeed their subsequent management. So very much again, it's that client-based approach, trying you not to think of this is how you treat a knee, it's trying to apply these are all the skills I have associated with a knee, and trying to think about treating that person in front of you. So the first 12 weeks of the programme, I say we're covering foundations of practice. There's a key emphasis there on musculoskeletal assessment, functional assessment, and again we're also looking at basic cardiorespiratory assessment and sort of basic assessment of neurological patients. And that placement runs hand in hand with our exercise module, where we're looking at exercise prescription. Now, a number of you with your undergraduate degree will already have covered exercise prescription to some degree, but obviously there's people who come from a non-traditional background and that will be a new topic. So within this module, we're looking at methods of exercise testing within a laboratory setting, in a clinical setting, and in a home setting, and thinking about, again, what is the evidence base to support them and the reliability and what factors can influence that. In addition to that, then, also what we're looking at that is how we're going to change our prescription of various exercise to meet that person's needs. So for example, if you've got somebody who's just had a myocardial infarction, what limitations is that going to pose on exercise, and trying to again think about encouraging our students to problem solve what is the pathology of a myocardial infarction, and what limitations is that going to pose on their exercise, and perhaps how are we going to vary how we're going to tackle an endurance element, a strengthening element, and an aerobic element. And again, it's relating that to their underlying pathology. So again, it's really trying to push that problem-solving approach. At the end of that semester, you have one written assessment, but you also have a practical exam. And I think there's quite a lot of practical exams for those of you who looked at how the courses run. It's peppered throughout the programme, and therefore the reason for that, Physio is a very practical profession. How we deliver the course is very practically orientated, and therefore there's quite a lot of practical exams, and therefore we need to make sure that you are competent and able to deliver basic physiotherapy assessment techniques, because at the end of this semester we send you out on clinical placement. So just to sort of recap, we are instilling problem solving, clinical reasoning skills. We're introducing research methods at that point to think about how that is going to influence our and shape our practice. And the whole plan of this semester is to sort of culminate in you being able then to deliver and practice and consolidate those skills within the clinical setting. So I think, again, for me, the clinical placements is something quite unique. We don't have a model here where you're with us for 2 years and then you go out on one prolonged placement. What we have is what we've built up as a very much a spiral curriculum, where that you come in, you get some delivery of theory-based teaching, practical-based teaching, in a number of different environments, and then you go out in placement and you can consolidate those skills. You then come back into us, and then we revisit a different client area or a different skill set. You get theory-based, practical practice on each other, practice with volunteer patients, practice within the clinical skills, and then we send you back out on placement to consolidate those skills. And that cycle really goes on and on throughout the course, and so that's how we sort of split the 6 placements that you undertake throughout the programme. And I think we really feel that helps students consolidate their knowledge, because practicing on each other, while that is very beneficial, it doesn't replicate what's really happening in the clinical areas. So again, I think that's a really nice aspect of our course to aid our students and consolidate their learning. As we move into the second semester, we start doing Physiotherapy Practice 1. And Physiotherapy Practice 1, again, we're looking at advancing your assessment techniques, so building on what you did in Foundations of Physiotherapy Practice, and we're looking at neurological management. And we also look at the spinal management of patients, so looking at the sort of manual therapy approaches. And again, not just teaching you one manual therapy approach. I think the musculoskeletal team who deliver on the course are quite passionate about making sure you're aware of the different approaches that there is, rather than it's McKenzie for all. It's thinking about, well, when is McKenzie a valid approach to use for a patient with low back pain, and perhaps when is a Maitland approach, or what about MWMs, what about sort of more of a Mulligan's type approach. And again, through the use of research, class discussions, seminars, presentations which you as a team put together, as a student team put together, we have a lot of workshop-based scenarios, and thinking about what are the pros and cons of those approaches, and perhaps at which stage in somebody's rehabilitation would there be a heavier emphasis on one approach than there is on others. Within neurological management, we cover, again, assessment techniques of those, and again, that module is very much delivered as in, here are the assessment techniques you can use for a neurological patient, and then these are all the treatment approaches that you can deliver for neurological patients. And again, there's an exploration of the research base, the evidence to support them. We're looking a lot at video material in terms of what techniques and showing you the effects of those. And then it's thinking about then working the latter parts of those modules, looking at the main neurological conditions and working through more problem-based learning, is thinking for these particular patients, what assessment strategies would you want to use and how would you need to vary them and why do you need to vary them. So at the end of this module, where we've covered spinal exam and a neurological element, there's quite a large practical exam where we're examining those separate components. And the emphasis really is there is, can you tell me how you'd assess them? Can you relate the clinical symptoms to their underlying pathology? Can you justify which clinical techniques you're using and why? What is the evidence base to support the assessment techniques you've chosen? What are the main problems you've identified for this scenario you've been allocated? And again, tell me what your 3 problems are, justify your treatment plan. And again, the whole idea of this module is to build on that first module, but again, it's preparing you for going out on placement. So you then go out on placement, and then we bring you back in again. And so therefore, again, it's sort of, we've given you those skills, and then you come in to do physiotherapy practice 2, which is very much focused on your acute skills management. So there's a high emphasis here on cardiorespiratory management, and that's applied to sort of very acute scenarios where we're looking at people with intensive care, high dependency unit. And again, we're trying to sort of stretch your knowledge and push your practice. So very much the scenarios in this particular module, maybe you've had a gentleman who's been involved in a road traffic accident, has got a traumatic brain injury, and he's also got problems, he's ventilating, he's also got lung pathologies, and therefore how are you going to adapt his treatment so that you're not going to cause any further damage from a central nervous system problem, but how are you going to be able to address his respiratory condition? So again, through the use of our simulation models that we have within the university, our use of the volunteer patients, we get you again doing a lot of practice-based teaching to develop those core basic skills in terms of cardiorespiratory management. Okay, so then as we move into second year, we have another clinical placement for you guys to, again, put into practice some of the cardiorespiratory and some of the more acute skills that you're having to do. And then we start looking at physiotherapy pathways, and this is where we start looking at long-term management of patients, and we start looking at complex presentations of patients. So we're starting to look at giving you scenarios such as a trauma patient where you've got somebody who's got a head injury, an orthopedic fracture, and perhaps they've got a cardiorespiratory issue. And what we're getting through case study scenarios is how are you going to prioritise, how are you going to manage that, how are you going to risk manage that, and how are you going to need to adapt your assessment for that. There's an emphasis within this module in terms of, you know, what are all the sort of psychological issues that go with that? What are the influence of treating people in different settings? What is the influence on education, self-management, government policy in terms of how that treatment will be delivered? Alongside this, we're also covering research methods, so we're starting to introduce you to the research skills and again develop those skills which are so needed so that you can engage with the research to inform your clinical practice as you graduate. So as we move through that was very much a sort of presentation-based assessment, and a written assessment will go hand in hand with those 2 modules. And then you go back out in placement again. And then the latter 2 modules which you'll be looking at is your research project, and students are allocated to either do a systematic review or a meta-analysis, or do some practical data collection and write that up as if it was for a journal publication. And indeed, some of our students who've done a research project this year, particularly with myself, are looking to publish some of the data that they've done from the research projects. And the last module which students do is looking at service development and service enhancements. And I think that really recognising advanced practice within this module will we start revisiting the core areas of physiotherapy practice, such as musculoskeletal, neurorehabilitation and cardiorespiratory, and thinking about how can we advance our skills, what are the developments in terms of new technology, what advanced skills are we looking at, and what new techniques are there, and what is the evidence base to support that. We're also challenging you to think about how we can re-evaluate services, how we can redesign services as part of that, and again thinking about developing entrepreneurial skills, leadership skills, how do we influence change management, how do we think about business models, and how does that impact on care. But also within this module, obviously, we're looking at the political agenda. We look at the political agenda of what's happening here in the United Kingdom, but also what's happening abroad, and that really reflects the nature of the cohort that we have. So we're looking at what's happening in the United States in terms of sort of things like around Obamacare, thinking about what's happening in Canada, what are the limitations, what are the sort of pros and cons of what's happening, and what influence does that have on people's health-seeking behaviour and the relationship that they develop with their physiotherapist. Wow, that's a lot of talk from me in about 18 minutes summarising what potentially will be 2 years of your life. But I think really just to sort of recap, for me the sales point for RGU is we're very practically based teaching, and it's very much trying from the outset to skill you up to be a problem solver, an analytical physical therapist, Rather than somebody who sits and absorbs a lot of theory, what we're trying to do is take people and be able to apply that theory. Physiotherapy is a science, but it's how you take that information and how you apply it and how you use that information to shape how we deliver treatment for our patients to maximise their potential. The other thing for me that is what makes this course work for us is the spiral curriculum. So we start with core skills, and the subsequent modules will pick up those themes and develop them as you go through. And with the clinical experiences that we have going through that, it allows students to have in bite-sized chunks of be able to take those skills, apply them in a clinical environment, trial those techniques and see how they work, think about modifying their practice, and then we bring it back into university, apply more knowledge, and then set them back out in placement to consolidate that. So nobody's asking me any questions just yet. If you do have any questions, please feel free. Don't be shy to ask me any questions. That's what I'm here for. I suppose then for the clinical placements is something I get asked an awful lot about. There is 6 clinical placements that run throughout the master's programme. The students that undertake the master's programme do a minimum of 1,000 hours of clinical practice. What we also try and ensure is for us is that students get a wide and a range of physiotherapy experience. And when we've been designing the course and reshaping the course over a number of years, obviously we involve our consumers of that and looking at employers. And one of the things that's key from them is making sure that our graduates have good core skills in a variety of clinical areas. Suffice to say, they don't want students coming out just with musculoskeletal knowledge. They want them to be able to deal with a wide variety of patients. And therefore our clinical placements, we send our students anywhere in Scotland, so we can send them from the far north of Scotland right down to the borders with England. And we also send students to the islands on the north coast, but also the west coast of Scotland. And therefore for us, we think that makes it a really unique learning experience in the fact that, you know, how physiotherapists may treat people with chronic low back pain in one part of Scotland might be different than a physiotherapist in another part. And I think that sort of adds to the students' learning, and through sort of encouraging more reflective learning, students can start analysing what works well and why. But equally that, a lot of our international students like that because they get to see quite a bit of Scotland while they're here. So from that point of view, for me the distances are quite big, but I appreciate perhaps coming from Canada and America, the distances, if I was to say some of those placements may be as much as 5 hours, 6 hours away, or indeed Orkney and Shetland, that's at least overnight on a boat or a flight, is quite a big distance for me, but I appreciate for you guys that might not be such a big distance. The placements, again, what we also have to make sure, because we have a number of students from Canada, we do ensure that students, in order for them to go back to their home country, we make sure that within your clinical profile that you have the requisite number of hours that are required by your accrediting body. So within Canada, we're aware that students need to have so many musculoskeletal knowledges, but you also can need to get so many cardiorespiratory and so many neurological hours. So with that, our clinical education team are really keen, therefore, it's not thinking about so much you know, all your placements in Aberdeen. We needed to think about spreading you out throughout Scotland to increase the variation of your experience, but more so I think what is really important to us that you graduate here with a good profile. And therefore students will have a minimum of 2 musculoskeletal placements, a neurological placement and a cardiorespiratory placement. We organise all 5 of your 6 placements for you, and that is organised by our clinical team. The 6th placement is the one that we leave for you guys to organise, and that's your elective placement, which happens at the end of the programme. We do have some advice that we give you, some information. We also have a database of where students have previously gone on elective placements to help guide you with that. A lot of our Canadian applicants and indeed international students do tend to go back to their home country, and it's a good stepping stone for them in terms of getting a foot in the door for employment once they graduate. All we need to make sure is where you're going on that elective placement that we know you're going to be safe, so various risk assessment tools being put in place. We need to check the quality of your placement is going to challenge your level of knowledge, and also we need to make sure that the right level of insurance is there to make sure that that is covered, and again, that you and your patients are going to be covered on placement. So, I mean, this year we have a number of students who, yes, return to Canada and the States. We also have a number of students who chose to have their elective placement with the forces. We have students who go to specialist national centres, perhaps, say, for example, in paediatrics or in orthopaedics, or particular spinal cord centres. So again, students liking to maybe experience sort of cutting edge technology has been applied to patients and then treating them and being involved in their rehabilitation afterwards. So that is placements. You guys are quite quiet. Is there anything that I can address for you guys at all? I'm trying to think what else. The accommodation here at RGU, there's a variety of different accommodations that students can select. The campus is at Gardaí, which is probably about a 20-minute bus ride out of the centre of town, and buses are regularly serviced here. So there's a bus either every 8 or every 12 minutes coming out here. So a number of our students coming to the master's programme tend to go in university accommodation for the first 6 months, and they enjoy living in town and living with other students. And then after that, many of those students then like to get a private lease and often just live over the road within Gardaí, sharing with other people within the course. In terms of accommodation, when you're on placement, that is something to be mindful of, and the fact that, for example, you may find yourself in a position where you need to have accommodation within Aberdeen, but say, for example, we were to send you to Edinburgh on clinical placement, now that's 2.5 hours away by train. It may be that obviously that would be something that we wouldn't necessarily recommend you commute on a daily basis. So you may find that you're having to maintain your accommodation here while also taking accommodation in Edinburgh while you're on placement. Now, we do leave you to organise your own accommodation for when you're on placement, but again, we do have a database of where students have stayed before and recommended places you could stay, and a number of them are hospital-based accommodations, so they're sort of cheap and cheerful. But it is something to consider when you're budgeting and to come on the programme, that you need to think about potentially periods of time for up to 6 weeks when you're on placement, that you may have to pay for 2 accommodations at the same time. And now what else will I talk about? Additional experiences that we provide for students. I think something when we've been designing the course at RGU, we're very mindful that there's a lot of people graduating with a physiotherapy degree, and therefore we've done a lot to think about how, you know, we can enhance your CV for when you graduate and trying to add further value to the course. So within that, by the time we get to the last module, which is very much looking at service enhancement, service provision, the course is very much, the module is very much run like a sequence of day courses that you would attend if you were a postgrad physiotherapist. We also invite clinicians in from the community that they may wish to attend that course in terms of refresher, in terms of their continued development. And again, I think what we're trying to demonstrate to our students that, you know, your degree course is your sort of entry into the profession. And again, it's trying to instill that sort of ethos that we're all still learning. Indeed, as a physiotherapist, I am constantly updating my knowledge as new research comes out, as new technologies comes out, and our understanding of pathologies enhances. So within that, we try and encourage physiotherapists to integrate with the wider physiotherapy community and start developing that sort of culture where we question our practice, we challenge practice in a professional manner, and that's really what helps shape and move the profession on in the future. A number of our students participate in some of the additional courses that are run in parallel to the course, such as the sports first aid programme, and therefore students will often then can do volunteer as sporting physiotherapy assistants and help at local soccer games, rugby games and so forth. So that's another experience which we offer. We also have a physiotherapy clinic that is run on site through the RGU Sports Centre, and a number of our students through the physio team who work within the clinic also can tend to do a lot of voluntary hours within the clinic, and again that's to broaden their experience of a variety of mainly musculoskeletal conditions. The other thing that we run here is every Monday we have about 80 older people coming into the university, and they divide into 3 groups, and we run a chair-based balance exercise program for those individuals. And therefore we as a staff group maintain that exercise group, and it's been running for over 15 years here. But at certain times within your course, we will expect the students to take ownership of that course, run that course, design the exercise programs, provide all the equipment from our stores to challenge the older people, and to really take leadership of that course and meet their individual needs, both in a seated exercise format, but also in just a general standing to improve their dynamic standing balance. So we also do that. We also run classes for people with traumatic brain injury, and likewise over at RGU Sport, where that is actually run, we're expecting you guys to design exercise programs to meet the needs of the clients that are coming in for that. So there are some of the experiences that are additional to that. In addition to placements at set times in the course, we also send you out to the voluntary sector And I think that's also just people to broaden their horizons in terms of what the scope of, and the role of physio is within the voluntary sector, and what are the challenges for people perhaps living with particular conditions. So we send a number of students to CLAN, which is a really good charity-based centre run within Aberdeen, which is particularly focused on dealing with people with cancer, particularly people with palliative care, but also early cancer. And again, it's to immerse the students in that, so they get a real feel for what it is like for those patients. And again, it's building those bridges between that sort of psychological profile that those conditions have and what impact it has on them physically, and to broaden students' horizon about what is important for the individual, rather than very much seeing them as a musculoskeletal problem. Okay. The research project, well, you're not asking very many questions, I'll just fill you in on that. The research is very close to our heart here at RGU, and a number of us as clinical staff are active in engaging in research. And I think research is quite a big component of the course. And while we're not expecting you all to finish this course and end up being researchers, it is definitely a key skill that you guys need to have in order to inform your future practice. So in terms of that, we need to be constantly reviewing the evidence to think about what I'm doing, is it the most effective? Is there anything better that I can do? What is the current evidence to support what I'm going to do for that patient? So there's a lot of emphasis on critical evaluation of the literature, and thinking about critically evaluating that, and thinking about within journal clubs, within the course, when would you use a particular treatment and why wouldn't you? And thinking about what are some of the methodological flaws that maybe we would detract from that paper and maybe would limit your ability to apply that to the patients that you're seeing. Therefore then you undertake your research project, and I think, as I alluded to earlier, students will either do a systematic review or they will do a sort of data collection project. And the data collection projects will vary, as will the systematic reviews, and generally students are given a choice of what projects they may want to do, and then what we do is we try and allocate where possible everybody to have the first choice. As you can imagine, based on the teaching team, we have clinical experts in musculoskeletal therapy, we have cardiorespiratory therapists and neurologists, and people dealing with more community and functional based problems, and therefore the research topics will reflect that. So for example, my students this year were very much looking at Parkinson's disease patients, and we're looking at measuring functional activity, comparing people's functional activity with Parkinson's disease versus healthy older people, and therefore they're very much looking at doing quality of life questionnaires as well as collecting actual quantitative data on how active those people were over a 72-hour period. Okay, I've got my first question. Thank you for being brave. What are the programme's admission statistics? And I suppose therefore you're wanting to know how many people apply, how many get through, and how many offers do I make. With that, the number of applications I get on a year varies. So this year I've had a huge number of applications, and from that, of them I think probably about maybe about 45% of them will be offered a selection interview. The interview is very, very important to us here at RGU, because I think what we put a lot of emphasis is on the individual, and what we're looking for therefore at the interview is for you to demonstrate some of the core attributes of a physiotherapist. So, and we're wanting you to demonstrate the motivation, your enthusiasm, your desire to be a physiotherapist. And I think from our point of view, although it is an academic science-based subject and therefore we are looking for a good GPA, what at the same time is we're looking for attributes such as care and compassion, and be able to work with others, because you could be a very, very smart student, but if you have difficulty engaging with others and communicating with others, you are going to struggle with being a physiotherapist. And I'm sure for those of you who have had physiotherapy or are shadowed physiotherapists, we do tend to be quite chatty, quite confident people. And if you think about trying to empower people to change behaviour or get out of bed after just had a hip replacement, or perhaps empowering, giving them that confidence to mobilise when they've got a dense hemiplegia, we need you to have those sort of core communication skills. We can develop and shape them and get you to explore that in relation to different client groups, but we do need those underlying strengths come through. In terms of that, in terms of the statistics, yes, I'd say I probably interview up to about 45% of those that apply, and then from that, each person is given a score. So your application is very, very important to me. I read all the applications, they all come to me, and from that your application is given a score. and then your interview is also scored, and total score is out of 100. And what we then have is a predetermined threshold, and anybody who scores above a set level is made an offer on the programme. And that offer can be an unconditional offer where we're quite happy with everything, or it could be an unconditional offer in that we maybe want you to get some more physiotherapy experience, we maybe want some further educational requisites completed. There could be a variety of things that I may ask for, or additional references, or different additional evidence of experiences that you've had to date. Okay, is there any other questions that people would like to ask me at all at this time? You're all being particularly quiet, I have to say. My email address is available on the website if anybody's got any specific questions, since some of you are perhaps being a little bit shy. Please feel free to email me directly. And for those of you who perhaps have a non-traditional entry qualification, we do consider them on an individual basis. So traditionally we accept people with kinesiology degrees, biomedical science degrees, anatomy degrees, kinesiology degrees. They're what I would call the traditional degrees that we accept onto the programme. At the same time, I'm getting an increasing number of students who perhaps have arts degrees or social science degrees such as geography, history. And I think, you know, for me, I will still consider those. I am looking for a strong application, and for you to be able to justify why you want such a career change, and perhaps why you're attracted to physio. And I will be looking to make sure you have a good knowledge, that you have a good understanding of what physiotherapy is, and making sure you know what you're letting yourself in for. But we will take students, as I say, from a social science background. We will, however, set some anatomy and physiology conditions if you were to be made an offer, because anatomy and physiology is a prerequisite for this course. Suffice to say, we do not teach anatomy from core principles within this module. I will expect people to know their muscle origins, insertions, muscle pathway, muscle groups, muscle function, muscle structure in relation to form, neural pathways, and I will expect people to have that. And we expect, therefore, when they enter into the first module, that we will go over anatomy. Say, for example, if we're trying to differentiate between the long and the short head of biceps, yes, we will obviously have to recap the anatomy when we're discussing that, but we would expect students already to have that basis, so we can go straight into, well, how would you differentiate that when we're thinking about applying a clinical assessment test. What is the average GPA of students who get chosen for the interview? I think really, as I've already sort of alluded to, I don't really take an average GPA. Those who have a higher GPA do score slightly higher in terms of when I'm rating their application. However, I think I also do look at students who perhaps don't have such a high GPA, but are able to demonstrate quite strongly core attributes of physiotherapy, and then therefore I think that comes back to the fact that I'm not solely looking at academic, I'm actually looking at the individual. And again, I think that's partly because of our ethos, that we really think it's the individual that we're looking for, and we're looking for those characteristics. So in order for me to even consider you for interview, I'm looking for an absolute minimum of a 3.0 GPA of a 4-point scale. So with that, that is the absolute minimum that I am looking for. And therefore, from that, I will take anybody. I have applicants who are starting this January with a GPA of 3.9, but I equally have some applicants with a GPA of 3.2. So I'm quite happy and quite confident with our selection process that, you know, if they've got a strong application, they sell themselves well at interview. Therefore, we will consider people who perhaps, you know, just go over that 3.0 element. Okay, so I don't necessarily take an average. It's a little, it all goes, each individual application is dealt with on merit. Just while I'm waiting for you guys to warm up and ask another question, just seems one person seems to be asking questions at the moment, is the application process is you submit your application online, and then it comes to our central admissions, and then what they look for is to make sure that it is all complete. So there is a checklist of information that I'm looking for. So I'm expecting information around your undergraduate degree. I'm looking for the transcripts for each year that you've studied. I'm looking for a degree certificate. I'm looking for references, and I'm really putting quite a lot of emphasis on your personal statement, which is why you want to be a physiotherapist. If that information is all present when it comes to the RGU admissions, then that application is sent to me. I then review that application within 10 working days, and then I make a decision whether I need additional information. And if I need additional information, you get 15 working days in order to be able to submit that to me. If I don't feel there's any additional information, then you'll be invited to an interview. So that's very simple how it works. The interview process, all applicants that are considered for the master's programme are done via Skype. So all our home students and all our international students are interviewed over Skype. And that's really just to make sure that we've got a level playing field, rather than have some students come here on campus and some students being Skyped. I think this year, in contrast to previous years, we've decided to Skype everybody, really to make it equitable and so everybody is on a level playing field. The interview will take up to an hour. It's conducted by myself and Donnie MacDonald, who's the course leader for the master's programme. And also, therefore, what we're looking at with your application, your interview, there's a set of predetermined questions that we're going to ask you. In advance of your interview, you will be sent some video material, which we will want you to critically evaluate, and then we will wish to have some sort of analytical and evaluative discussion within your interview. And we're also going to give you a piece of research which we want you to read and prepare in advance for that. And again, we're going to have some discussion within that interview session on that. So the interview process takes an hour, and then after that a decision is made in terms of what type of offer that you are going to be made for the programme. The interviews are held throughout the year, and therefore I have some dates set already for sort of 2014, and there from that, when students have been offered an interview, they liaise with our staff here about which interview that they would like to select. I do tend to do a lot of the interviews on a Wednesday night, just recognising people like yourself, you are a little in a different time zone than us, and they're to save interviewing at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning. Donnie and myself tend to work late on a Wednesday night to accommodate the time change, so hopefully it won't be any great inconvenience for anybody to be interviewed through Skype. What else can I tell you about the interview process? The interview process is also your opportunity to ask us any questions that you have about the programme. At various times in the year, like this evening, I did a online web chat with our applicants. So at various times in the year, we do web chats where our students who are interested in the course have an opportunity to speak to me, people from admissions, people from the international office, people from accommodation, people from finance. But also I get some of my students who are currently on the programme to participate in that, and therefore you can ask current students what their feelings are about the programme and how they found settling and studying in the United Kingdom, and how they've settled into our kind of way of teaching, where there's an emphasis on self-direction and there's an emphasis on problem-based, inquiry-based learning, perhaps which is in quite contrast to some sort of more undergrad programmes which are very much didactic, as in I give you all the information, absorb it and then give it back to me. So again, that can be a really useful forum for people. I guess a frequently asked question I get asked, can I apply to the course when I haven't actually finished my undergraduate degree programme? Yeah, absolutely. So if you're currently in your final year of your undergrad programme and you're thinking you'd like to come and join us in January 2015, I would welcome your applications now. Obviously, if you were offered an interview and then were successful at the interview, it will be, at a minimum, you will be given a conditional offer of you completing your undergrad, and you will be given a condition of a set GPA that we'll be looking for. So we appreciate that, coming to study abroad takes a little bit of timing and takes a bit of planning, and therefore, if you are wanting to make those decisions now, yes, I'd welcome those applications now. Indeed, I am accepting applications currently for 2015. So that's something not to be shy of. I do take applications all year round. I suppose that said, I would recommend that you apply before the summer, because that way that you know what's going to happen. And for example, this year we had such a strong amount of applications and a huge number of applications that I actually had to close the admissions by August. So again, I would stress that people could apply as early as possible. Okay, this guy is just asking if I'll be graduating in spring 2015. When should I apply? Okay, so 2015. So you would be thinking about coming into the programme for January 2016, based on when you define spring. I presume that's sort of March, April. So you'd be thinking about coming in to study in 2016. You can apply. I would apply. let's just see, just get my numbers right. You can apply as soon as you finish your undergrad, which will be in the spring 2015, or you could apply this time next year, which is the fall semester of 2014. Yep, so there you go. Is physics a prerequisite? If so, variations like biomechanics you can. Well, thank you very much for your question. It depends on where you're from. If you're from Canada, physics is not a prerequisite for the course. There is some detail on the website about physics being a prerequisite, and that's particularly for American applicants in terms of, in order, because we're accredited by CAPT, not only do American students have to meet a certain GPA, but there's also some prerequisite courses and credit hours associated with those courses, and physics is one of them. If you're Canadian, I don't have any specific physics prerequisite, so you maybe can chill out. I have to say physics was never a good topic of mine. So no physics is a prerequisite, but biomechanics for me, certainly if that's something you've done, I think biomechanics is a huge bonus if you've done some degree of biomechanics. And certainly how I approach my physiotherapy teaching is a lot about how a person moves, and so a good understanding of kinetics and kinematics will be a good grounding for the program. So depending where you're from, whether physics is a prerequisite. But Canada, no. America, yes. And generally American students have to do Physics 1, and Physics 2 is a sort of prerequisite for CAPT. Okay. Anybody else? You guys are really quite shy. Anything else I can help you with? I guess I'm just trying to think of all the frequently asked questions that I get. Other questions that I get asked is whether, when you come over here, whether you'll be eligible to work in the United Kingdom on completion of your degree. The answer to that is yes and no. Because this degree is accredited by the UK Physiotherapy Society, so the Chartered Society of Physio and Healthcare Professions Council, because you've completed that degree, in terms of physiotherapy, you are eligible to work in the United Kingdom. That said, whether you will be allowed and still eligible on the completion of your degree is dependent on what the immigration status is for physiotherapists at that time. And so depending on the UK border controls will be whether you are eligible to get a work permit to work in the United Kingdom. So just to make that clear, yes, you're eligible in terms of a professional point of view, but what will overrule that or trump that will be depending on what the UK border control rules and regulations are at that time, and that may prohibit you actually staying and working in the United Kingdom. Currently, as it stands, physiotherapists are eligible to stay in this country if you get a full-time job within 6 months of your graduation and you are less than 30. So currently we've had some Canadian students this year who've chosen to stay in the United Kingdom that have met that. What I can't say is if you were to start your studies in 2015 and therefore be eligible to work in 2017, whether that would still be the UK border agency's rules and regulations at that time. And I have to say, in all honesty, that's something completely out with control of the university, but I think it's always something to be mindful at that stage. Okay, I think I pretty much covered everything that I need to. And the course is fairly self-explanatory. There's going to be some new information going up on our website about clinical placements. I've recently just done a video shoot covering a lot of the material that I covered tonight. Will also be going up there. I believe KOM records this, so you can watch it at your leisure at a later date. I do welcome people to come over and see us at different times of the year, and you'd be very welcome to come and visit us on campus to sort of see the facilities. So if anybody does want to come over and see us, you're very welcome to, and we can arrange for you to tour the campus. And if my students aren't out in clinical placement, we can also get you meeting some of the students that we have here in clinical placement, or who are currently here as active students. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So I will maybe just halt there, and if anybody has got any questions, as I said, please contact me via my email, or indeed you can contact KOM and they'll be able to forward your emails on to me. And well, thank you very much, and I look forward to receiving your application.